Belshazzar was the king of Babylon. Now he was a party boy. That's all he thought about doing, was drinking and women and having fun. He didn't care anything about God whatsoever. And one night he had this big party, and they'd been drinking really for days. And he'd run out of stuff to do that he thought was fun. So he said, I want you to go to the temple and get all the temple goblets that we stole out of Jerusalem, from the temple in Jerusalem, and bring them in here. We're going to fill them up with wine, and we're going to drink out of the goblets from the temple. Well, that's what they were doing. And you know, when folks get drunk, it's no good. First of all, they begin to think their tongue is thick. And then after they think their tongue is swelled up and thick and they can't talk straight, they can't see straight. And they're beginning to see two of everything instead of just one. And now they can't talk straight, they can't see straight. And then next thing you know is that the balance between their ears gets out of whack, and they can't talk straight, and they can't walk straight, and they can't see straight. And the last thing, which is worst of all, is they can't think straight. Well, Belshazzar was in that condition. He was trying to make fun of God. And all of a sudden, on the wall was a hand. Just a hand and a finger. And it began to write. And it wrote in a language that nobody understood. It said, Meeny, meeny, tekel upharsin. And Belshazzar sobered up quickly. And so did everybody else in the room. And he said, Send for the wise men, send for the wise men. Bring them in here and tell them what that is on the wall. Well, the wise men all came in, and they brought their big books with them, and they looked up at the language on the wall, and they leafed through their books, and they looked, and they couldn't find it. And they said, we can't find it, Belshazzar. It's not written in any of our books. We don't know what language it is. And Belshazzar said, You better find it, or I'm going to have your heads. And about that time, his mother, or maybe his grandmother, came in, and she said, Belshazzar, your dad had problems with dreams, and there's a man here in the country named Daniel who can ask his God, and I bet you he can tell you what that writing up on the wall means. So he said, Well, then send for Daniel. Well, Daniel came in, and he looked at the wall, and he said, That's God's language, and I know what it means, but you're not going to want to hear it. Belshazzar said, I do want to hear it. Tell me what that means. Well, he said the meeny means that there have been balances, and they've put the weights of the bad things you've done on one side and the good things you've done on the other, and the bad things have way outweighed the good things. So you're weighed in the balances and found wanting. And he said the rest of that message says that this very night, the Medes and the Persians are going to take this city and take your empire away from you. And before Belshazzar could even do anything, the Medes and Persians were there. Let me tell you how they got in, because that's very interesting. You see, Belshazzar had a wall around his city that was very thick. It was huge. In fact, it was a double wall. But there was a beautiful river that flowed right up to the wall, and then it went down underneath the wall and came up in the middle of the city and flowed through the city. It was a beautiful spot. And then it went down underneath the other side of the wall and out on the other side. Well, nobody could get through those walls to capture the Babylonian Empire, but the smart Medes and Persians had stopped up the water, and they made the water not flow under the wall, but flow off in a different direction. And eventually, it had dried out, and there was a complete tunnel under the wall and right up into the city. And while Belshazzar was trying to figure out what the handwriting was on the wall, the Medes and the Persians came in and took over the city, and that was the end of Belshazzar, but not of Daniel, because God saved Daniel's life, and he became a wise man to the next king. It's very, very silly to think you can make fun, not only of God, but of your parents or a teacher or the Bible school or the preacher. If you're doing things to make fun and trying to get attention for yourself, that's dangerous. Belshazzar found out how dangerous it was to make fun.